Today I'm going to make a table saw fence and a router table fence for my multi-purpose workbench. If you are new to the channel, be sure to check out my video on how I built the workbench. If you want to build this fence yourself, I'm giving you a free plan and I put the link to it in the video description. This is very simple design, and the most important thing about it is that it is strong, functional and provides perfect cuts. I like how it came out, and now I can make different cuts on my table saw and router table faster, easier and safer. This fence is made out of plywood board with 21mm thickness. So I cut the pieces on my table saw. I clamped down a scrap of plywood and used it as a guide for more accurate cuts. I used the jigsaw to cut the smaller parts of the fence. Here are all the pieces cut to size. You can find all the dimensions of this fence in the free plan. Before putting all the parts together, I'm going to do a quick sand with 180 grit sandpaper. For the larger pieces, I used the random orbit sander, but for the smaller ones, I used the sanding block. I'm going to make knobs out of the smallest pieces, and I'm going to round their corners a little, which will make them more handy and easy to turn. I decided to do the sanding in the beginning because it would be much harder to reach all the corners of the fence after attaching everything together. Okay, now I can move on to assembling the fence. The most important thing here is squaring. Every piece needs to be square with the workbench, so work on a flat surface and measure twice before driving the screws in. First, I'm going to glue these 3 boards together with a wood glue and clamp them down. Then I pre-drill holes on each side with a countersink drill bit, making the holes deep enough for the screws to be flush with the surface. After that, I'm driving 5 cm long screws on each side. The screws will hold these pieces tight in place. Now that I'm done with the main part of the fence, I can move on to the front and the back of the fence. This piece needs to be perpendicular with the main body of the fence, and 65mm of it need to go below the fence. I drew this line that will help me achieve that. I also marked the places where I need to attach the screws. I pre-drilled the holes with a countersink drill bit, and then I attached it on the fence. It was a little bit hard to do because I don't have clamps with appropriate length. I decided to apply a wood glue, add some weight, and wait for it to dry a bit so I can drive the screws in. After that, I turned the fence upside down and drilled 2 holes on the bottom of the piece that I previously attached. Here I'll create the lock mechanism of the fence. I need some extra support on the back of the fence to prevent any flexing, and this small piece will provide that support. I'm going to use 3 screws to hold it in place. These 2 pieces of plywood will be secured together. I marked 2 points where I'm going to insert T-nuts because they need to be adjustable for the sliding part of the fence. These 2 holes need to go all the way through both pieces. This means that I need to drill the holes carefully to make them straight and perfectly match both pieces. Everything looks good and I can join them together. First, I installed the T-nuts. I applied a small amount of 5-minute epoxy so they can stick well to the wood. Then I pulled the T-nuts into the wood with a clamp. In order to make knobs, I drilled holes in the middle of these 2 small pieces of plywood where the bolts will be inserted. As I said in the beginning, this fence can be used as a table saw fence as well as a router table fence. Although I needed to make a hole on one side of the fence before assembling it, I am doing it now with a 35mm Forstner bit. I removed the extra plywood with a U-shaped saw, which is awesome for this kind of work. With this done, I actually turned this table saw fence into a router table fence as well. The next thing I need to do is to protect the wood with a finish so that all the pieces that I'm going to cut can slide smoothly on the fence. I applied 1 coat of water-based polyurethane on all parts of the fence with a rag. It is transparent finish, which I like because I wanted to achieve a contrast between the workbench and the accessories. This long piece of plywood is actually a guide rail of the fence, and it needs to be placed under the top of the workbench. Before that, I'll protect it with walnut stain, the same that I used for the workbench. The guide rail will become a part of the workbench, and I want its color to match the color of the top. Once everything is dry, I can move on to putting everything together. I'm joining these two pieces together with wood glue and 2 screws. I didn't have 10 cm long bolts, but I made 2 bolts out of threaded rod. Then I insert these DIY bolts into the knobs and use nuts and washers on both sides to tighten them well. Then I insert the knobs into the holes that I previously made, and finally I insert the last piece on the other side. This means that the lock mechanism is done. One more thing I need to do is to attach the guide rail of the fence. I carefully applied just enough wood glue without making a mess and clamped it below the top with a bunch of clamps, making sure that it is flush with the front of the table. After that, I pre-drilled holes with a countersink bit, and at the end I attached 35 mm screws. I attached a lot of screws on a shorter distance because the rail needs to be firm and flush with the front. At this point I'm done with the fence. To add the fence I have to slide it in and lock it with the knobs. Once it is locked in place, it's not moving, which will provide accurate cuts. What's left to do is to check the squaring and run some test cuts. Now I have a guide that will help me cut wood evenly, precisely and safely. In the next videos I'll build some other accessories which are a must-have for a workbench like this, and I'll provide free plans for them as well. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Also, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.